Taking refuge in Sangha, coming home to be amongst our spiritual companions and to undertake this training of the heart mind. I invite you to get in touch with this determination to practice dwelling in the present moment, setting down the past, setting down the future, and to return to what is happening right here and right now, establishing yourself in a noble and natural posture, and feeling the presence and support of your spiritual friends coming together to undertake this practice that has been preserved and passed on for over 2,600 years. This sacred act of pausing, the art of stopping and looking deeply within ourselves. I invite you to turn your attention inward and to find an anchor that is supportive, neutral, and simple. Perhaps that's feeling the weight of the body pressing against the surface below you. It's maybe sounds, tuning into the soundscape and letting sound bring you back to the present moment. Or you might anchor your attention to the breath. The breath are only constant in this life. Coming home to develop understanding and intimacy with what's happening and what's here internally. noticing if there's a possibility to further soften any micro tension in the body. Soften to whatever feeling tone is present. Welcoming whatever's here, giving the mind permission to be exactly the way it is, giving the body permission to experience what it's experiencing. Awareness, just rest in that calm, that steadiness of your anchor, taking in the movement and the sound of the world within you. Resting, resting deeply. I return my life to the one who listens deeply to the sound of the womb. Resting, resting deeply. I return by light to the one who listens deeply to the sounds of the womb. Resting, resting deeply. I return my life to the one who listens deeply to the sounds of the world. Resting your attention in the present moment with what is here now. I invite you to expand your awareness to include the whole body, coming back into the space. And one by one, tuning into each sense door, bringing awareness to hearing, seeing, feeling, taste, smell, slowing down so we can really absorb and take in the depth of our present moment experience. To live deeply in the now, it requires that we are free from the past and the future. So we practice cultivating this present moment awareness to know of this life, to know of what's happening in the body, what's going on with our perceptions, our feelings, our mind. So setting down the weight of the world, we're not burdened by the future and the stories of the past. We're not pursuing a life that's not here now. So, what does it mean to not pursue the past? Not pursuing the past means to consider the way one's body, feelings, perceptions, mental formation, and consciousness was in the past. But the mind is not enslaved or attached to these things which belong to the past. So we can look into the past to consider and know how things once were, but we're not attached by it, not bounded by it. Then that's what it means to not pursue the past. What does it mean to not lose ourselves in the future? When a meditator considers the way their body, their feelings, their perceptions, their mental formations, and their consciousness, and how it will be like in the future, but their mind is not burdened by it, not daydreaming about these things that belong to the future, then the meditator is not losing themselves in the future. And what does it mean to not be swept away by the present moment? This is like one who learns and studies about the awakened ones, studies about the teachings of love and understanding, lives in harmony and awareness. One who knows about noble teachers and guides and their teachings and practices these teachings And this person who doesn't get swept away by the present moment doesn't think that, oh, this is mine, this is me, this is my body, I am this body, or these feelings are myself, and I am these feelings. This perception is myself, I am this perception. This formation, this mental formation is myself. I am this mental formation. This consciousness is myself. I am this consciousness. This is what it means for a meditator who is not being swept away by the present moment. And this is taken from Thai Thich Nhat Hanh's commentaries of the Sutra on knowing the better way to live alone. And knowing how to live alone doesn't mean that we have to live in solitude, in a cave, somewhere separate from others. Because if someone lives alone in a cave, they could still be lost in their thinking. And in that way, they aren't really living alone. And so living alone here means to have sovereignty over ourselves, to have the freedom that comes from not being dragged away by the past, to not live in fear of the future, not being pulled around by strong emotion caused by the circumstances of the present moment. So when we are masters of ourselves, we can be with the situation of life as it is, here and now. Yesterday, I was on my way to the park and I bumped into one of the neighbors for the first time who lived right across the street. And we had a very lovely encounter, a meeting of the heart and mind. And in our exchange, he had shared that, he had over 10 years ago, finally stopped consuming alcohol and chose to live a life in sobriety. And he said, everything you're saying to me right now, I would not have been able to receive that over 10 years ago. this sense of living in the present moment, this sense of taking refuge in our spiritual home. And now he has a AA support group that he considered one of his spiritual homes. And he said, when I came out of those dark times, was when I realized I just can't continue to live like this. It just doesn't work. And what really changed me was this recognition of how short life is. How short life is. That it has me live in the now. It has me be able to be present and fully here. And he was on his way to take care of the land, to dig out some trees, stumps that had fallen over the river. And I said, you could be doing anything right now, and you chose to contribute to take care of this land. Thank you for your contribution. And he said, yes, this is what it means to live a life where it's beyond the self, right? And life is so short. And I could see in his eyes the clarity of that understanding, of that recognition. He says, I'm retired now. And this is truly finally in my life, getting to actually live life. The past is gone. And now I finally get to live life fully. Having seen this and understood this. So the sutra called the Parikarata Sutta is about how to live in the present moment. So read the translation to this version of the sutra is translated by Thai Zen Master Thich. Do not pursue the past. Do not lose yourself in the future. The past no longer is. The future has not yet come. Looking deeply at life as it is, in the very here and now. The practitioner dwells in stability and freedom. We must be diligent today. To wait till tomorrow is too late. Death comes unexpectedly. How can we bargain with it? The sage calls a person who dwells in mindfulness night and day the one who knows the better way to live alone. The past no longer is. The future has not yet come. looking deeply at life as it is in the very here and now. The practitioner dwells in stability and freedom. So we might wonder, well, how can I dwell in stability and freedom when there is some uncertainty in my life? Finances, relationship, job security, living situation, the economy, the government, all of these things. How? How is it possible? For me, it's that reframe that in those moments of anxiety. I shared a while ago that last year there was a time when I think the first time in my life where I had it feels like a first time, a panic attack. And grateful for the practice of mindfulness because that to be mindful of a moment where it feels like the rug is pulled out from under and to be present even for that. And inside of that, there's that wisdom that arises that can say, this is not, this is not separate or other than how life should be. This is a part of life. This instability. I've heard this many times before, where people, many people, thousands of people I spoke to have experienced this. So this is not new, Trina. This is real. This is life right here now to experience this. And to not run from that moment. Right? So that's what it's like to look deeply at life. So not one that's pleasant and good and well, but to look deeply at how life is. Right here now, any sense of uncertainty and worries that we might have about what's going on in the world outside of us or within us. What does it mean to look deeply at life as it is? So while that was going on, and I felt the anxiety continue to intensify, and I practiced as best as I could deep breathing, mindful walking, trying very hard to stay present to each meal, each conversation, each interaction. So each time we cultivate mindfulness like that, we return to the stability amidst the circumstances of our life. Because only there, while there's a sense of stability within us, can we see through it. Can we see through the circumstances that are here? And then see clearly what it will take for us to free ourselves, to bring the external conditions back into a stable place, the ones that we do have agency over. Because if we get lost in the past, we can go into shame or blame, trying to fix something that's no longer here. It's over. All we have is now to work with. And the future is not here. So that longing pining, that wanting to reach out or something certain, some guarantee in the future is an illusion. All we can trust in is the present moment where we can offer ourselves a sense of security, relief, or making that one skillful movement and action or effort. But it's grounded in present moment awareness. So to look deeply means to look beneath the circumstances, to see the conditions that brought this together, that makes our life the way it is now, with humility, with gratitude, with compassion, looking deeply, seeing clearly life as it is in the very here and now. So not just our life, but just being human. And when I was in this exchange with my neighbor friend, shared about, ask him like, what was that moment where you turned the corner? What did you realize? What happened that had you turn the corner? And he shared that, it's when we think that our suffering is so unique and no one understands it, that we're alone, that we lose sight that this is not just personal to me. This is so many people go through this. I'm not alone. So when someone is in a group setting of safety and deep sharing and vulnerability, we get to hear another person suffering and connect to that and know that we're not alone. That is this understanding of seeing clearly life and this human experience. Ah, yeah, okay. So it is like this is not just me. I'm not bad and wrong, inadequate, or what is wrong with me? Why can't I do this? It's, this is what it means to be human. And even in that recognition of seeing life deeply, what happens is one comes back to a sense of stability. Okay, I'm okay. Things will be all right. I do belong here. I do belong in this. And freedom is that moment of recognition that we can be in the present moment with all of these things, not rejecting it, not pushing it away, not wishing ourselves and our circumstances to be some other way, but to come out of it with that clarity, having seen life as it is. And that understanding too that arises from knowing that the end of our life is unknown. When that time comes when we take our last breath, it's unexpected, and how we go is unknown. and there's no way we can negotiate our way out of it. So the sage, the wise one, calls a person who dwells in mindfulness night and day, the one who knows the better way to live alone. Present moment as it is where we can access happiness, peace, love, goodness, and freedom. If we live in mindfulness, we are no longer poor because our practice of living in the present moment makes us rich, rich in joy, rich in peace, rich in understanding, and rich in love. So even when we encounter someone poor in spirit, we can look deeply and discover that person's rich layers. So for anyone who wants a rich life, practice and live in mindfulness, and you will experience the richness of this life. It's, uh, I can transcribe this and then, yes, and then share this with you. Yeah, and with everyone. And the name of the sutra is in Pali, Karata Sutta. I'll put that in the chat. Every few years, couple of years, I put together a class, 8-10 week class where we learn about the selected sutras and various ways these sutras are translated by Buddhist scholars in relatable terms, and then we studied the sutra in a way that's connecting to our heart and to our experience. And the commentaries from the Buddhist scholars. A number of them are my teachers. But this is one of the favorite that we look at. So I'll pause there and open up the space for sharing, reflection, any questions you might have. I won't have the answers, but I can share my responses.
Thanks for this, Trina. Um, I read an interview with Jane Goodall, who I think she was the one who lived with the great apes. Uh, and I think at the time she was something like, I don't know, 94 years old or something. And the interview shifted to the topic of death, and she was so excited. And she was like, I've had a full life and I cannot wait for the next adventure, the next experience. It reminded me so much of what I read in Pema Chodron's book, How We Live is How We Die, and how in the early chapters of that book, there's a description of someone who was dying and had their loved ones around. And she was basically uh, unmedicated and quite conscious and aware through up to her death, where it was like uh, she was pointing to her mouth and they said, "Do you want something to drink?" And she kind of shook her head a little bit. And then they realized she couldn't speak anymore. And then I think she pointed to her ears after another few hours. And it was, I think, I think Pima wrote that, you know, she was kind of praying that she could be that conscious when she died. Um, to walk into that next space is, yeah, it's not something to fear really, but it's a great reminder for us to take this little treasure that we have, which is our today's breath, and use it wisely.
Mm. Thank you, God, to be so aware of each sense door closing up, how moving that is, and without panic, but there's looking deeply, fully being with what is happening, with the presence, the sense of calm and acceptance for what is. Mm. Thank you for sharing that story. Yes, fully being. Mm, mm, mm,
Mhm. Good morning.
mm,
So this has been a really good talk. Um, I have been awake in the early morning hours, finding myself not so much worrying about the future, which I typically have a fair amount of, um, but mostly thinking about the past and a certain situation of the past. And I this morning was able to name it, and I named it attachment, and I named it grasping. And it was amazing that when I did that, everything became very, very peaceful. And I realized that all of my life, I've spent so much time in the future and so much time in the past. I mean, even with therapy and things like that, you go to the past and you're always, bringing up the past and reliving the pain and trying to make change that way. And I just realized, boy, this is the place I have missed being. I This is where joy happens. and that I maybe haven't had as much joy as I could have because I've spent it in those two places. So, yeah, sometimes it just kind of hits you. But it's like, wow, this morning I thought, this is where I have not been in my life. And it's very calming, very calming. Thank you.
Thank you. May I ask a follow-up question? What does it feel like to have recognized that, have come to see that? What is it like for you?
Oh, it feels like a revelation. It feels like a big aha, like, uh, and it feels like the right place to be. It feels like the right place.
Mm,
Yeah, a peaceful place.
mm, mm. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm just really moved by your seeing, your realization. Mm, mm,
Good morning.
Morning, Kim.
I don't know if you can hear me okay. I have the 4-year-old in the background here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, and not the 4-year-old.
Oh, well, please let me know if the Transformers transforming sounds get a little too loud.
Not a sound of that is coming through. So
Oh,
really,
good.
thank.
Um, I have found this to be enlightening so much this morning. To fully be in the now, as Carla was saying, it's something that until we really find our way into a practice such as this, I don't know that we really understand what that means. I certainly did not. And I thought it was interesting what Rob was sharing about um, just being completely, fully there and realizing that we don't know when our last moment is.
Mm,
And so, I mean, when we came into the world, we did not know. We have a no clear recollection of coming into this world, and it was natural, and there was nothing to fear. And so when we are leaving this world, I've often thought, how do I know if there's anything to fear? I didn't know that there was anything to fear when I was born. I didn't have that awareness. So it is just as natural, is it not? And so that has somehow comforted me somewhat through the years. And I have also felt guilty at times of saying to my kids, come here, you give me a hug. You know, we never know. We never know what the next moment, when they're leaving the house, like, don't you leave without giving your mama a hug. Come here, because I always think this moment is so precious. And I thought, maybe some people might feel like that's pushy or fear-based. And it's not important for me to know what others are thinking about that. What's important is to celebrate the joy of the now and to check in and to say, I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds, of course. But that was an interesting article that Rob shared about Jane Goodall, the next adventure. And it made me think of my experience coming out of one of my surgeries. I did not come out very well. they were very concerned. They couldn't bring me up out of the anesthesia. And when they finally brought me up out, I literally saw like different levels, just as clear as day, different levels as I was coming up out of it. And I said to myself, I don't want to come up out of this. And it was so peaceful and there was nothing to fear. And so that experience, then when it was shared with someone else who had a similar experience, led me to find another little piece of calm. You know, I don't pretend to know all the answers or understand everything, but I do know that it is an honor to live every moment as it is the last, and to be here with you all and doing just that. So thank you so much.
Mm. Thank you so much, Carol. Mm. Mm. Highlighting, I'd like to highlight something Kim shared amongst all the many things you've all shared that has been just so profoundly moving. But what is it? What are the conditions that give rise to fear? So when we didn't know, when we came out of the room, there was no fear. But what give rise to that fear within us? Right? So that's where the understanding of self, the five aggregates, and grasping onto self is what give rise to fear. The perceptions, the mental formation, the consciousness, the feelings, this body, grasping onto these things give rise to fear. And when we were born, when we were a child even, we don't grasp onto this that we call the self. So part of this training in meditation and mindfulness is to thin out the self. So therapy can have us turn towards the self and maybe put ourselves back together so we have a sense of self again, right? And then repairing the self by understanding our past, the traumas, what happened to us. And then the practice of mindfulness and meditation, vipassana, which is the practice of looking deeply, is then now to deconstruct the self, turn towards the self, deconstruct the self, fully, deeply understand the self from that lens, and then to let go of self. And when we are not grasping onto self, we step into that freedom of living in the present moment with how life is, with life as it is, without being pulled away by the mental formations, by feelings, by perceptions, by preferences. Personality, our personality can still be there, but we can be aware of our personality. personality is like that fragrant. There's a metaphor for that. It's like the fragrant of a flower. Is that fragrant in the stem? Is it in the petals? Where is it in the leaves of the flower? Where is the fragrance located? But as soon as that flower is no longer there, the fragrance also is gone. So that's like the essence of us, of the self.
Trina, something you just said brought something to me. Um, I think when your attachment means you're holding hands with something, and when you're attached, it's like holding hands with somebody that's facing one way or another. If you're holding hands with looking in the past, you're holding hands with regret, with shame. When you're holding hands with something that's facing the future, you're holding hands with fear, anxiety, uh, um, and all of that is out of your control. It's there because of your attachment, because you're holding hands with it. Anyway,
Yeah, I appreciate that. That that visual image, but also that visceral feeling of holding, right? Holding on to something that then weighs us down and pulls us away, pulls us out of the present moment. And burden becomes a burden over us. Mm. So in the end, this practice prepares us for that final moment of letting go. So we practice letting go now in all the ways to fully be here, fully be in the present. And then there'll come a moment where that's it. The end of the adventure of this life. And we are then practicing that final moment of letting go, not holding on to anything, and letting ourselves be free, letting the natural, as Kim says, natural process of life happen to us. Thank you for joining me today in Sangha, in our beloved community, and this beautiful practice. Mm. I see something in the chat. Kim says, in my practice, I'm searching out awareness of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, and watching when the attachment and identifying begin within, and to take that U-turn back. Much easier said than done. Yes, it is a practice. Mhm. Mm. Thank you for sharing that, Kim. And Katie says, thank you all so much. Everything that was said is so helpful. Yes, so please reach out to me if you'd like to receive the transcription and recording for today's talk. That will motivate me as I was last night developing the structure of how this will be so that everyone who comes can access it, or who can't come in the morning can access it when they miss it. So I've got that opening now, the the structure, the building blocks for this process to happen. Very excited. So your your request fuels the fire for my effort and energy to realize that. You all have a wonderful and present day experience. May you live a rich life today. May you live a rich life today. Much love and blessings to you all. Please feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to bring in your voice.
Right here, right now.
Mhm. Ready for takeoff to infinity. Bye, Steffi. Bye, Kim. Bye, Kim. Bye, Michelle. To infinity and beyond.